I know you're gonna dig this.
This is Rhine McLin, host at the Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center's award-winning show, Funk Chronicles, recorded live here at DATV Studios in Dayton, Ohio. Zooming in are Paul Thomas, Circle City Band, and UMEG Media Management and Production in Indianapolis, Indiana, and Felton Pilate of the funk group Confunction in Atlanta, Georgia, and also Reggie Griffin, funk legend, all the way from Indianapolis, Indiana. Welcome. I am delighted today to be in the presence of funk royalty. So, this is
honored to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, this is an exciting opportunity. So welcome, Paul. Welcome, Reggie. Welcome, Felton.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
So what we're going to do, we're going to talk about funk. We're going to talk about what you do, how you got to where you're going. And this is your show. I'm just here to facilitate for you to give us the history of your funk journey.
Whoa.
So I'm going to start with Paul, and tell me, Paul, how did you begin your funk journey? You know, when did you learn how to play instruments, and when did you get excited about having this journey in life?
Well, I started trying to play instruments actually when I was in grade school. I was influenced by my play uncles at the time, Cannonball and Nat Adderley.
Oh my!
They used to come through every time they came in the area. They would come and stay at my mom's house, and a couple of times their bass player Walter Booker kind of took me under his wing and taught me how to play the bass. Gave me a couple of lessons. He taught me my notes and all that. And we would go sometimes and go to Chicago, Fort Wayne. I remember specifically when we went to Chicago for the first Operation Push Black Expo. And I was around so many legendary musicians and stars, but one thing in particular I always remember, they kind of stuck me with two musicians that were younger than them. They were older than me, of course, and that was Bernard Purdy and George Duke. And I hung out with them the whole week. And then after that, I was so excited about being in the entertainment business. Me and my cousins started our own little garage band and all that. And I met Reggie's younger brother, Rayford Griffin, who plays with us also, and Chucky Bush, who was a member of Reggie's band, Manchild, later on. And ironically, the lead singer of Manchild grew up across the street from me. So he brought me to some of the rehearsals, and then I met the whole band and kind of like just followed around as a glorified groupie and honorary roadie. And Reggie taught me a bunch of stuff. And one time he asked to borrow my bass guitar. I had bought a brand new Fender Jazz bass I came over at his house to get the bass and went in the basement, and he had this reel to reel, and he said, "Hold on a minute." He played a bass track on the thing. And he let me listen to it, and I said, "Okay, is that the band?" He said, "No, that's me." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "No, that's me." And he let me listen to each individual track, and he played all the instruments, including the drums. I said, "Man, if you teach me how to do that, you can use my bass anytime you want to." And so it just started from there. He created a Frankenstein monster. I've been doing that ever since. And so that's, and then a few years later, me and another friend, DG, we met Felton coming through with Confunction, and we latched on to him, and just every year they would come, and their success just grew and grew. And he would honor us by letting us hang out at the concerts and stuff. So we became really dear friends. I think this was like 77 or something like that, Felton? Maybe even
sounds about right. Yeah.
77. And so one year I came out with a record, excuse me, in '83. No, let me go before that. I moved to Los Angeles in '81. And what ended up being with LTD as kind of like a roadie and a side musician. And my first gig on the road, went on tour with them. My first gig was in Palo Alto at the Circle Star Theater. We were with Confunction, and I walked up on Felton. He's like, "Oh man, so now I guess I'm gonna say it like this. I think he took me seriously as far as me really being a real musician, because before that I was just known to be in Indianapolis and a guy that played, but I ended up being with them on a tour, and after that I came back home and I put my own record together that Reggie also helped me with, and that was the start of Circle City Band. And
now what year was that? What year was that?
That was '83.
The Circle City Band.
Yeah, Reggie came home. Reggie came home from being at Sugar Hill Records. He had done Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five and all that stuff. And he brought a drum machine and a vocoder and a keyboard with him. And I said, "Hey man, I got some studio time. Come down and hang out." So he helped me put this one track together. And then I got a couple more drum beats off the drum machine, and I built this song Magic that the gospel record label Ty Scott was starting a secular record label called Circle City Records. So kind of like in the fashion of Reggie, I played all the instruments on top of the drum beat, and but I didn't want to be a Paul Thomas record. I wanted it to kind of be just a producer in the background, even though I did all the instruments. So I told him, I said, "Well, let's just call this Circle City Band, representing the city I'm from." So that took off a little bit. BET, as it was starting out, called, because Frankie Crocker in New York actually broke the record in BLS, and Reggie called me about that too, because he was living in New York. And so BET ended up contacting us. They wanted to use the instrumental for a theme song. So that was the little claim to fame for that record. But I wasn't getting the support from the record label like I heard big record labels do. So I called Felton and asked him, I said, "Can you give me some help on connecting me with, because they were with Polygram and all that." He said, "Well, I've got some good news and some bad news. The bad news is I'm no longer with Confunction. The good news is I'm starting my own production company. And if you come out and work with me, I'll help you." So, hey, that was a no-brainer. So I headed to Vallejo, and he trained me on how to run his recording studio. And one of the clients that we were doing was MC Hammer. That's actually, he did all of the albums that I remember. But the first one that came out on Capitol Records, I was one of the engineers on, and I ended up getting a double platinum award for that, thanks to that man right there. So we've stuck together on and off through all of these years, and now I convinced both of them to join me on a quest to give tribute to the funk legends, and also to help me with I'm teaching and mentoring young people to teach them how to play instruments and be producers or all of the things that we know how to do. We're giving back and also leading by example. We plan to go out. Well, we were doing something until this Corona stuff hit, but we plan to take this out as a tribute, and hopefully we put together an album that's featuring these young people along with us, and doing something special. I think hopefully it will go really big and will cause a lot of success in a lot of young people's lives.
Well,
sorry, I know that
you.
was a long-winded answer, but
well, that's okay. Okay, because since we're in, I'm in funk royalty. The other players in the scene there, they getting their little strokes in there too. You giving them, so I know this is all going to be a love fest here, since I'm in the presence of funk royalty. So I want to hear from Reggie. Reggie, where did you get your start? How did you get to where you are today? What was your beginnings?
Well, to go all the way back to the beginning, I'm kind of from a musical family. My mother was a classically trained singer. She graduated from Howard University as a vocalist. She never went professional with it, but she sang in church. My father was a minister. Her baby brother was a very well-known jazz musician named Clifford Brown. Again, we're going all the way back to the 50s. So, a lot of people these days might not be familiar with him, but he was a person who was played with people like Dizzy Gillespie, Miles Davis, Charlie Parker, and all these people back. Sadly, he died at a very young age. But anyway, so it was kind of in my blood. But as far as the funk goes, at the age of 12 or 13, we were living in Houston, Texas at the time. My father took over a church in Houston. But at the age of 12 or 13, I went to my very first concert. My very first concert was James Brown. And to this day, I remember going to that concert and hearing the music and saying to myself, how do they do that? And just hearing the grooves and the music, and it's like, oh man, how do they do, and just hearing the groove, and it's like, and it's just all together in this groove, and it's like, I just didn't understand it, but it was just so exciting to me. I was like, I just wanted to know how they, I related to James and the singing, but just the music, I was like, how do they do that? I wanted to know how they did that. The very next year, they started the band in grade school, and I wanted to play the saxophone. So that was my first instrument. I related to Maceo, playing Maceo, blow your horn. So I got a saxophone, and I was blowing my horn. A few years after that, we moved. My father came back here with the ministry to Indianapolis, and I started playing alto sax in bands here, local bands here. And I had to ask my father at the age of 15, some grown-ups want me to come and play in the nightclub with them. Can I go out and play? And my father was like, I need to meet the leader of the band first. So he wanted to meet the leader of the band, a guy named Billy Ball. So I was playing with Billy Ball and the Upsetters, playing at 2 o'clock in the morning at 15 years old, playing alto saxophone. And I was doing all the solos because Billy was starting to lose his chops a little bit. And from that point on, I grew as far as playing sax, and I started picking up the guitar because the guitar player, I just noticed that I had a knack for instruments, and any instrument I picked up, I realized that I just had a knack for it, and I could just pick it up and figure it out. So most of the instruments, other than sax, I'm pretty much self-taught. I play piano, I play guitar, I play bass, I play sax, I play drums, pretty much whatever's necessary. From that point on, as Paul was alluded to, a little, again, I'm going to go move up a little bit. Later on, started a band. We had a band called Man Child. Of course, there were a lot of bands in between there, but a band called Man Child, I ended up being the leader of, which ended up becoming a band that that became noteworthy as far as probably the premier funk band of Indianapolis, because we got back in the 70s, got a national recording deal, and had a hit on the Shy Sound Records, the same record label that the Shy Lights were on at the time. And actually in those days, we did some dates with Confunction and Parliament Funkadelic back in those days. Again, we were like kids, literally. We were like 19, 20 years old at the time. And from that point,
what was the name, Reggie? What was the name? What was your hit?
The hit was Especially for You. And Paul.
Really? It was especially for me? I said, really? Was it especially for me? No.
Especially for me. But yeah, that was the hit that we had. I can't remember how high it went on the Billboard charts, but that record took us on the road. And again, we were opening up for groups like P-Funk and Bootsy, and again, did some dates with Confunction and a lot of the R&B groups that were happening in the late 70s. But it didn't really take us over the top to really go all the way. And sadly, the group, we kind of splintered and started to break up right near the end of the 70s. At that point in time, I'm kind of skipping through a lot of stuff, because I don't want to can't give every detail. But bottom line is we broke up. I'm leaving out one detail. Actually, of course, Kenny, who to me is just Kenny, but Babyface Edmonds was also a member of our band at the time. He left the group, ended up obviously getting a solo deal. I left the group, went to New York, ended up getting a gig as a session player, producer, and studio musician with Sugar Hill Records, where I was working with a fledgling rap label, actually the very first national rap label, which was Sugar Hill Records. Because in the late 70s, rather, 78, 79, there was no such thing as a rap label. Sugar Hill really was the first one. Sylvia Robinson was the first one to say, you know what, if people get a chance to hear these kids rapping to a beat, this could be something that could be worldwide. And of course, Rapper's Delight was already out before I started working with them. And so I get a call from Sylvia Robinson, and she's like, Reggie, we did the Rapper's Delight is huge, it's worldwide. And we really need something for the gang to come back on. And they had already recorded a rhythm track to a song called Apache. And I listened to it in the studio. They had the rhythm bed down. And I'm like, boy, these guys are killing. They had bass, drums, and guitar. But nobody was doing the keyboard. They didn't really have a keyboard sound. I was playing a lot of polyphonic synthesizer, which was the new thing coming on, which a lot of people weren't into at the time. So she said, Reggie, what would you put on this? I went into the studio, got my Prophet 5 synthesizer out, started putting all kinds of filter sweeps on it, put the little line on top, and did a filter sweep on it, put all kinds of parts on it. The record came out, it was a smash. So from that point on, I was hired at Sugar Hill Records. And pretty much everything that came out at Sugar Hill, from the message on down the line, I either played a bunch of the instruments on it, arranged it, co-produced it, and just did a whole lot of records, a whole lot of work on the at that label at the time. And of course, again, that was pretty much set the stage for hip hop at its very beginning. from that point, of course, the whole window of Sugar Hill only lasted, 4 or 5 years? So yeah, from like 79 to like 83, something like that. But anyway, when the Sugar Hill took its nosedive, if you want to call it that, I worked for Philly International, where I worked with Phyllis Hyman. I worked with Patti LaBelle. I worked with the OJs. Boy, I forget. So to be honest, I worked with so many different people. But I also toured with Kenny Babyface and I got back together. I've toured with him for years. Also met and worked with Ronald Isley when I was working for Sugar Hill, because actually the Isley brothers lived literally down the block from me when I was in New Jersey at Sugar Hill. The same house where Jimi Hendrix used to live with the Isley brothers was literally walking distance from me.
Wow. Wow.
Down the block, but I had met the Isleys down there. So when Ron moved to Los Angeles, my brother, coincidentally, was playing drums for the Isley brothers, and Ron said, "Hey, Rayford, what's your brother doing?" Asking about me. "What's Reggie doing?" He said, "Well, he's back there in New York. Give him a call." And so he gave me a call. So I ended up working with and touring with the Isley brothers, and I also produced on the produced the Isley brothers on the what's the name of the album? Boy, I forget the name of the album. But I produced some 3 or 4 songs on a few albums, on the albums with the Isley brothers, with Ron and Angela, and toured and played with them for years. Toured and played with Babyface for years, which again brings us up to now for the most part. I left a bunch of stuff out, but again, I could talk forever about the different people I've worked for and the different people that I forgot that I worked for.
You know, one of the things that's so interesting when I look at you gentlemen, that you gentlemen look so young, and then when you start talking about all your experiences, it leads me to believe that you started when you were babies, because you look so young. But
it's hair dye.
Okay. And when you start giving me all this history, I'm saying they got to be past 30. They got to be past 40. So I'm going to stop there. I'll
put it like this. I'm not ashamed to say I have 9 grandchildren from 2 years old to 20 years old.
Oh my. Okay, Reggie. That says a lot right there. How, Felton, you know the question? Let me hear it.
Okay. There's been a piano in my house as long as I can remember, ever since I was 4 years old. So I've been tinkering around with music ever as long as I can remember. My mother was also a classically trained musician. One of those amazing musicians who put some sheet music in front of her on piano. She's off and rolling. She's also a singer. Never did anything with it. And so her love of music was based in opera and classical style music. My dad loved to sing, although he wasn't a singer. But his thing was jazz. So what I grew up with until probably about 14 or 15, and we had a here's an old school word for you. We had a hi-fi in the house, and a record player that, of course, you could stack several records. So at our house, over the course of the day, it was a case of whoever got to the record player first got to stack on their record. So I was either listening to Bach, Beethoven, whatever, or Count Basie, Duke Ellington, Frank Sinatra. So that's pretty much what I grew up on. I wanted to play drums, and so in 4th grade, I wanted to join the band. I wanted to play drums and started off on drums, but they had too many drummers, so they decided for me that I wanted to move me over to trumpet. So then I took trumpet lessons in school. But I wanted to play piano. So my mother gave me piano lessons. And then a friend of mine across the street, his name was Alan Gerling, had significant roles in each other's lives here. Alan's mother had bought him a guitar, and Alan was not a musician by any stretch of the imagination. But his mom bought him a guitar, and he designed his own guitar amp. Literally made his own guitar amp. As a sidebar, in my house, living in Vallejo at the time, we had the library was in my room, and I had read. The entire wall in my room was the house library. Included in that library was a book on electricity, which was my least favorite book. So one Christmas, Alan and I are marching across the street, exchanging Christmas presents, and I gave him my book on electricity. He gave me his guitar. He later, in his later life, wound up owning his own electronics store. Kind of know what happened to me. So I now have a guitar, and I asked my teacher how to tune it, and so I now taught myself how to play guitar. Started my first band when I was 16. I was part of another band, the first group I played with. And my first song on guitar was Tighten Up. All of two chords, F sharp major seventh, B major seventh, right? Okay, I'm like, hey, got this, right? All I had to do was move your head. Got this, okay, no problem. But my first funk song, and like I said, because of growing up with classical music and jazz, I didn't discover a black radio station until I was about 13, 14. And so once I quit the other band and formed my own band, the first song that we learned was Cold Sweat, James Brown. So that was my diving into funk. I mean, because now, of course, if you're in a band, you have to dissect the record to learn the parts. So that the whole process of diving in and listening to, how James Brown would bounce the bass parts off the one, maybe two guitar tracks, and every other record from that point on was like a matter of dissecting it and learning it in the process. I was part of, there was another competing band in town called Project Solo. My group was called, my two groups had Interbreed and Second Movement. When my second movement broke up, the leader of the other group, Michael Cooper, had found out and asked me that I wanted to join his band. And I said, oh, well, I don't know, let me think about it. Yeah, okay. So that was pretty much the beginning of my path. Project Soul moved to Memphis in 1972, where Michael, myself, and our drummer, Louis McCall, became studio musicians over at Stax Records. We were the newcomers in town, and then they kind of liked us. And the fact that we could pick up, ideas and stuff very, very quickly, they put us to work at Studio C over at Stax, which was their demo room. We wound up doing demos for The Emotions, Johnny Taylor, with the writers, Carl Hampton and Homer Banks, who wrote songs like, if loving you is wrong, I don't want, and so we wound up doing demos for them. We wound up getting a record deal with Mercury Records in 1976. Did one album, which was basically, our first album was basically just to get us out of the contract that we had with the whole production company. And after we sold about 60,000 copies, the record company said, okay, well, now let's get serious. So I contacted a brilliant producer named Skip Scarborough, who did the work with Earth, Wind, and Fire. He wrote the songs You Can't Hide Love, Love's Holiday. Later, he also did Giving You the Best I Got for Anita Baker. He wrote Love Ballad for LTD. He wrote Don't Ask My Neighbor for The Emotions. So anyway, Skip came in and produced our second album, which went gold and pretty much put us on our path. He produced 4 of our 5 gold albums. Miss him a lot. He passed away the day after Barry White passed away. As Paul mentioned earlier, I wound up, after I quit Left Gun Function for a while in 1986, I met up with a guy named the Holy Ghost Boy, who later became MC Hammer, and I produced along with worked with Paul and James Early his first 3 albums. We did them the first 2 at my studio. I talked about him going to a 24-track studio over in Richmond somewhere. Hey, man, I can get you the same sound. I only got 16 tracks, but I promise I'll get you the same sound. Okay. So I came over and recorded Let's Get It Started. And then we took, we worked on, Paul, we did 357's album and Ace Juice's album.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. And I'm sorry, we actually duplicated my studio and put it on a tour bus, and that's where we recorded Please Hammer Don't Hurt 'Em, with You Can't Touch This. That was interesting feat all by itself. There's that back room of the tour bus, the back room, which is smaller than my bathroom, right? That's where we pretty much recorded the entire album, including mixing it, and a 16-track reel-to-reel. We did 2 Legit to Quit at Prince's studio in Minneapolis. I'm sorry, what's the name of the studio? Paisley Park. Mike and I put Confunction back together again in 1993. We are still touring. Well, except for this year, but life has been it's been ongoing. I've had a chance to work with got my last Grammy working with Stanley Clarke. Wrote a song for George Duke, became the title track of one of his albums. I've produced and recorded songs with Lenny Williams, as a Southern soul artist, Jesse James, had a chance to work with him. It's been a journey. It's been a very blessed journey. Glad to be here.
When I'm listening to my funk royalty, you gentlemen, and I'm just all the folks that you've come in contact with, and you're still in the music business, you still have the desire, the passion to reinvent yourselves and to keep it going. When we're thinking about the future of funk, what comes to your mind about how do we do this? How do we keep it going? How do we pass it on? I was just talking to Paul earlier about the charge or the change. I can't remember now. That your song, Paul.
Bridge.
The bridge. I'm sorry. The bridge. and so I just told my age. The bridge. the bridge, and how this new music that you're talking about doing, Paul, with motocross and all these, bringing in all these things that are of the latest interest to folks. And then to see the 3 of you guys here, each doing your own thing, but yet you are together. aiding and abetting one another, and not in a negative way. So I'm just curious that what keeps you going? How do we keep funk alive? And what projects are you doing in this area? Anybody?
Who do you want to start first on that question?
I'll let you do it. You all talk.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, with me, here's the thing with me. I have my youngest child. I was getting him involved in sports, and I was looking for a gym to start an AAU, our own AAU basketball team with a friend of mine, and I went to this. One of his first basketball coach told me about this school that was over in my neighborhood where I grew up at, and told me that they have AAU tournaments and they rent out the gym for different AAU things. So I went over there and to rent the gym, and it just so happened the guy who ran the gym said, "Man, didn't you used to do music?" And I said, "Yeah, I still do music." He said, "Man, I remember when you guys used to rehearse in my grandmother's house, and I was a little kid, and y'all had the whole neighborhood outside, dancing and stuff, like it was a concert." And he said, "I never forgot that." I said, "Oh, really? Who was your?" He said, "You played with my uncle." I said, "Who was your uncle?" It was a guy named Don Smith. That, of course, I played bass for his band for maybe about a summer, or maybe it was even just a month or whatever. And he said, "Come here, I want to show you something." So in this gym, it was an auditorium with a big stage and had lights and all that. He took me upstairs in the above the stage, and they had a whole room, a big room with lockers full of all the band instruments. I mean, every horn, the violins, cellos. They had these little Yamaha keyboards, about 20 of them laying on the floor with the little speakers on them. They had drums, they had guitars. I said, "Oh, you guys got a band, like a march?" He said, "Man, we don't have anything." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Nobody's here to teach them." He said, "The teacher quit about a year ago." And I was like, "Quit for what?" He said he couldn't relate to these kids. Now this school was built by Goodwill Industries as an alternative school for kids who supposedly were bad kids that weren't supposed to graduate from public school. They'd been kicked out of public school. So this was like a last ditch effort to make them be able to graduate high school. So I said, "Well, man, I've never taught before at any school." He said, "Well, let me talk to the principal." And, the principal said, and he was a young guy too, by the way. He said, "Man, we'll come to the lunchrooms and we'll do a survey. If you get 5 kids interested, we'll put together some kind of program for you. And maybe we can work together." Nevertheless, 28 kids signed up. So I ended up not having to rent the gym. I ended up, after passing the background check and all that, to make sure, I wasn't a child molester or anything like that. They gave me my own swipe pass ID, a master key to the gym and my own classroom, and let me do an after school program for 2 hours I went in Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays working with these kids. And that started me on an amazing journey, because a lot of these kids, I was teaching them not only basic music theory and notes and stuff, but also history of the music business, and based on my experiences and what I knew about. And, of course, we're here in Indianapolis, Indiana. One of the things that I asked all of them, and I do this quite often now, is, "Do you know who West Montgomery is?" And all of them said, or most of them said, "You mean the park?" And I was like, "No. Do you know why that park is named West Montgomery?" They said, "No." So I basically let them know West Montgomery was a black man from here, actually just right across the river from the school over in Lockfield, which is the area near the Madam Walker and Indiana Avenue, which historically was the Black community of Indianapolis, all the businesses and all of that. So West Montgomery, as you all know, is probably one of, if not the most influential guitarist in music history. I mean, you know, and even though he was a jazz player, his influence, I mean, it's been stated by Jimi Hendrix, Eric Clapton, Stevie Ray Vaughan, that they were influenced by Jimi Hendrix. And I talked to Reggie the other day because I asked him and Kenny, as he put it, as you guys know, as Babyface, they play their guitar style similar to West Montgomery with their hands, with their thumbs, because he didn't use a pick at all. And I asked Reggie the other day if they did that because of West Montgomery, and he told me no. But it's just ironic because that style was original or considered original back then. But it's just the way he played several different things. But moving on to the school thing, I ended up teaching them, and also on Saturdays I would let them come down to my recording studio downtown and actually write and record their own songs. You know what? And what was amazing to me was that I didn't tell them what to write or what to rap about, and I didn't put a stipulation on them like they couldn't do explicit lyrics or anything like that. So I let them have their own freedom what they wanted to write about. Almost all of those kids wrote about topics concerning God and helping their family get out of the ghetto. And I thought that was really amazing to me because most of the rappers their age or things their age, people think they're automatically talking about selling drugs and being in gangs and defiling women and all that kind of stuff. These kids voluntarily, on their own, came up with lyrics that were meaningful and you know, very exciting and inspirational to me. So what I decided to do, and these kids were extremely talented. So what I decided to do was do a project where I kind of featured them and was co-writing with them. And I did quite a few songs. And then Felton, especially every time Confunction comes to Indianapolis, I pretty much work with them. And I told Felton came down to the studio, and I introduced them to him, you know, showing them the celebrity. Same with Reggie, because Reggie lives in Hawaii, but he's been here for quite a while now, spending time with his grandkids. But at that point, Reggie was just coming back and forth. So Reggie was gracious enough to come out to the school, and we actually did a session where him and my man Tony Cheeseborough, who's formerly with the Ohio Players, but from here in Indianapolis, we taught them how to. One session we was teaching them how to do 1-4-5 blues, and Reggie and Tony kind of was freestyling and showing them that, but Tony made up some lyrics because one of the kids came in with his pants sagging. So they came up with a blues song, and Tony was freestyling lyrics. Please pull your pants up. We don't want to see your butt. And that was the chorus of the song. And I actually videotaped that. Reggie playing the guitar in the background and Tony playing harmonica and singing the lyrics. And the kids playing along with the chord progression. Like I was counting at 1, then the 4, then the 5, and back to the 1, and they were following it, and it was great. So basically, I decided, hey man, you guys come and help me with these kids, and I'm putting together an album. And one of the first songs that we did with all of us being involved in this was I asked Felton one day, I said, hey man, what would it take for me to remake Let Me Put Love on Your Mind? This was a famous hit record that Felton wrote. I think pretty much darn near did a lot of the stuff on there, definitely all the vocals and all the writing. But he said nothing. He said, it's my song, go ahead and do it. So we collectively, I came up with some pretty much kind of like the beat. Felton put his hand in on it. Reggie played awesome guitar on there. and we got some of these young kids to actually be what younger people, because one Peanut, who's a offspring of Man-Child, by the way, Chucky Bush's nephew, rest in peace. We got him to be they were the vocalists, featured vocalists on this song. And of course, Felton Pilate I got the original guy to do the hook on the song. So now we have a big collaboration of that. And that was like the first song that all three of us are on and working with these younger people. And so it's just then kind of took off as a labor of love after that. And I said, hey man, let's put together a whole show and a whole project with this. So, and what I decided to do was pay tribute to all of the guys that we worked with that not only have I had the honor of working with, but that influenced me before I even know how to play, which is all of the funk guys. Bernie Worrell, Sugarfoot with Ohio Players, Slave, because after that, I actually got Felton's manager, Phil Arnold, called me one day and asked me, he said, man, I need you to help me with a graphic. I do graphics also, by the way.
I noticed that. I noticed that, Paul. I noticed that you do graphics.
Right. Well, Felton got me, I got plugged in with Jesse James, by the way. Felton has done all of Jesse James' albums. And I've done a lot of Jesse James album covers, by the way, the blues man, Mr. I Can Do Bad by Myself. Anyway, Phil knew about that. He said, man, I need you to do a graphic for me for the Ohio Players for this show that's coming out called Unsung. I was like, okay, so I put a poster together, and he said, great, man, what are you doing in Indianapolis? I said, well, that's where I'm from. He thought I was from California, but I said, this is my home. I said, well, what are you doing? I need you to come out on the road. Okay. So next thing I know, I'm on the road with Sugarfoot, hand in hand, like right-hand man. The first gig is in U.S. Airways Stadium in Milwaukee. And guess what? It's like back in 81. Confunction, the Barcades, Zap, Slave with Drac from Slave. So and Confunction is back in Draca. So it was just like back in 81 when I came on board with LTD, and I'm on the road with all these guys, the same guys.
Paul, let me hear from Reggie and and Felton a little bit here.
Okay, sorry about that.
I know you got a lot to say. I know you got a lot to say, Paul. But I got Reggie and Felton here, and I just don't want them to be your chorus.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I mean, let Paul
I know, but I want to hear your voices too, especially the gentleman that lives in Hawaii. He lives in Hawaii and happens to be in Indianapolis, which is really. Are you caught in Indianapolis because of the virus?
Well, again, my oldest daughter lives here, and I have 9 grandchildren that live here, and again, over the last X number of years, I've literally lived all over the world, from New York to LA to Hawaii, and I'm wherever the music takes me. I've also, because I also toured with a reggae band called Big Mountain over the years also. But anyway, as far as the music and connecting, as far as what's going on today and and going back to the funk from the old days, and kind of to connect with what Paul was talking about, be honest with you, it's like when I think about the fact that I was right there at the very beginning of hip hop and the foundation of where it started, and I look at a lot of the kids nowadays, and again, to connect with what Paul was saying, actually there are a lot of kids nowadays that don't even realize that the music has to come from somewhere. In other words, they think making a record is you get a beat off the radio, you get a beat from somebody, and then you just start rapping on top of it. It's like the music had to come from somewhere. Somebody had to play an instrument. Somebody had to play a guitar. Somebody had to play the drums. So because of that, again, just like these guitars hanging up on the wall behind me, again, that's why my grandchildren see those, and not just my grandchildren, but any kids I'm around. It's like, oh, that's where that sound came from. That's where that bass sound came from, that instrument right there. Oh, how did it come out of there? You put your finger on it and you play it.
Right.
Same thing, with drums or a trumpet or a trombone or any other instrument. So just trying to connect all those dots because as you also probably know, a lot of the music has been taken out of the schools.
Right.
And so we don't want to lose that connection because a lot of it has been lost, but we want to try to make sure that connection is not totally broken and lost, and we keep that going for this younger generation. So again, that's another reason that I spend a lot more time with my younger kids. My grandkids and my daughters. And again, it doesn't have to be my grandkids, but other people's kids too, like Paul was talking about, just keeping it going.
I think that what Paul was talking about, finding all those instruments in like an attic of a school building, because one of the things that we know that when budgets get short, the first thing they cut is the extracurricular activities, and that might be just the thing that's bringing a kid to school, and also to develop an appreciation of music. Taking band was probably one of the most exciting things that I did as a young person, because it taught me to appreciate all levels of music, from classical to Dixie to country, and know that all of it is connected. And our children are missing that because, like you said, Reggie, they don't know where music comes. They just think it happens. They don't understand beats and rhythms and how music is the eye to the soul, because no matter even in racial problems, you can go to a concert of music and you have all different ethnicities there, and for that one moment in time, they are together for the music. And so Felton, what add in here to us about
funk, in my opinion, as we know it, evolved, not evolved, but the serious funk, the old school funk as we know it, came about because of several musicians working together. There's the bass player who's working off of the drummer, the guitar player or other guitar player now filling in the holes what little holes that are left between the bass player and the drummer, and working off of each other. And it's those, I almost call us, not sporadic, it's not the word I'm looking for, those independent ideas that just happen to flow together, coming from musicians who are familiar with their instrument, right? And music is really, it's all about rhythm, right? And so being able to listen to rhythm and say, well, wait, there's another little polyrhythm that can fit over here, there's this. And nowadays, unless you have musicians like, for instance, Reggie, who's familiar with the bass and the guitar and the keyboards, and so you've got this one musician who can now split his brain, per se. And I guess that, let me go back. Today's technology has now made it easy for a single person to sit in their room and create, right? For, as also as Reggie mentioned, a lot of kids today, the easiest thing, not necessarily the best thing. They'll search the internet for other people who have sat down and created beats, and they just download it and now express their creativity over either writing some lyrics either to be sung or rapped on top of, right? Sadly, from a musician's point of view, from my musician, that they're not going to learn that aspect of learning how to create the music. Mm-hmm. They won't, because it's easier for them to just wait for someone else to do it and buy it. And so they're, in my mind, that they're going to miss out on that joy of being able to create the whole thing. And it really is a joy. There's working alone in my studio, and I play a little bass and a little guitar and keyboards and I can create in my mind, funky stuff, but it's not the same as getting that input from someone else. That random stuff that I wouldn't have thought about. Right. That makes that additional funk thing, which is like I like working with musicians over the internet. Here, man, let me send this track. Give me a guitar idea. Give me a keyboard idea. So I can get that extra influx of creativity. I had a chance to work with Dwayne Wiggins from Tony at his school. He has this nonprofit school that he's doing out in Oakland, California. When I was living out there, and I was helping out my mom, and I would go teach at his school, and it's a joy watching young people eager to learn, about the basic music theory or how to create song lyrics so that it has a flow, so that it has, which many times in today's song music, it is just as important on how you say it as opposed to what you're saying. Mm-hmm. And so we were teaching all of that, and that basic music theory and basic piano and guitar and bass. And I enjoyed working with Paul on the project we were doing with the kids up there. And so the question of how do you forward that? How do we pass that on to today's youth? It's going to take a lot of involvement of, for instance, with what we can pass on from a studio point of view, because they've taken so much music out of the schools that this is stuff that not just us, but any musicians, yes, I'm throwing out the challenge right now, musicians, get involved with the young on a personal level. Right. Since they're taking it out of the schools, it's on us as individual musicians and teachers and leaders to pass on this knowledge of what we have before it goes away. We are, people are always known to, it's an unfortunate human trait to take the path of least resistance. And if we continue along these routes of let's just wait for someone else to do it rather than develop my own creativity, I think the music is going to go away. It's going to, that ability to actually create music, it's likely to go away. I don't know what to say.
If I can come in for 1 second.
Sure.
If I can come in for 1 second. Also, they're being influenced by other things that are negative, that are not, like if the only people that are paying attention to them are gang members and people on the street that are doing things that are not positive, that's what they're going to be led towards. And I just wanted to say that.
Well, as where I'm going at, because we're getting ready to wrap up, but I'm going to start with Felton, come to Reggie, and I'm going to let you bring up the rear, Paul. That how important is it for us to allow funk royalty such as yourselves to be able to tell your story so that we can archive this and and also to establish the Funk Music Hall of Fame. It's extremely important. So it's important to me because I'm from Dayton, Ohio, and I'm the home of the Ohio Players and Slave and Lakeside. But how important is it that we do preserve our history through the Funk Music Hall of Fame? Starting with you, Felton, and then we'll go to Reggie, and then Paul, you'll bring up the rear.
Okay.
I think I'm just going to add the word extremely to your question. It is extremely important, and not just funk, just music in general. We are at NARIS, we talk about it all the time. The fact that they've, again, I reiterate the fact that we've taken music out of the schools. So us as musicians, as parents, or as just figures in our community, there's a music legacy that needs to be continued. The story has to be told, has to be passed on. I think it would be a travesty for us to not do it.
Thank you. Reggie?
Well, all I can do is concur. It's like, it's basically the fact that since its birth, whether you go back to James Brown or Sly Stone or whoever, of course, those are some of the big artists, and all those in between, from Confunction to, again, a lot of the Ohio players and the groups that you mentioned. I mean, legends. They should all be known. They should be held in high esteem, and people should know the contributions that were made. And I mean, I don't know what else I could say other than the fact that there are pieces of elements in some of the things that you hear that the kids are doing these days, but they need to know where it came from. And so that's one of the biggest reasons that it needs to be known. That it needs to be known.
Thank you. Paul?
Well, what those two guys said is I'm definitely concurring, as Reggie put it. But the most important thing for me is the fact that all of the people that I've mentioned and that we're talking about are legends, and a lot of them are leaving. They are no longer around, and these guys, and especially the ones that are no longer here with us, they influenced my life in a positive and productive manner. I don't work for anybody else but myself, and I've raised children, one that's gone through college, the other one that's starting his sophomore year at Purdue University, and all that, and based off of what I was influenced and was taught by these guys, these two guys here on the screen in particular, but all of the other people that, I probably wouldn't have met a lot of those people if not been for these two guys taking me under their wing and teaching me things. And the positiveness of that is undeniable. And these people deserve to be known. And they're not in history books. They're not. And if you take the music programs out of the schools that are these kids in these kids' neighborhoods, like Felton said and Reggie said, it's going to be lost. It's going to be gone, and that would be a travesty. And if I can have anything to do with it, I'll go to the grave, putting that same influence as much as I can. And I'm honored to be able to do it. And if it wasn't for, me knowing the details and the history of this, I wouldn't my career wouldn't exist as we know it. And I'm still the fact that I'm still in it and still have the, like you said, the desire and all that to do it. I want to influence as many young people as I can to have that passion and that striving for success on something positive and productive. And every kid is not going to be a famous singer or a rapper, but they can learn how to be sound men or graphic artists or stagehands. A union stagehand makes like on the average of $27 an hour, $40 an hour overtime. That's not McDonald's.
No, it's not.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
and that's it. I mean, I like Forrest Gump. That's all I have to say about that.
Well, you know, and one of the things that listening to you gentlemen today, you talked about the different areas of the music, and I think that's, you know, extremely important. Sometimes, you know, that the person behind the scenes, the songwriter, the producer, that they make more than the folks that are singing for the suppers. So that is something that we have to keep emphasizing for our young people to know, that the music industry is more than just singing and playing. I want to thank you, Paul Thomas. I want to thank you, Reggie Griffin. I want to thank you, Felton Pilate, allowing me to be in the presence of funk royalty for this Funk Chronicles. Thank you so much. This is Rhine McLin, host of the Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center's award-winning show, Funk Chronicles. Until the next time, keep it funky.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's take it to the bridge. Let's take it to the bridge. Come on, hit the floor. Let's take it to the bridge. Side to side, back and forth to the bridge. Shake your body, 2-step to the bridge. Drop it to the floor, break it down.
That magic from the sparkle. If I love you and I place no one above you, won't you say that you will be my babe? I've been watching you so very long.